The latest installment of Coming Up Next, the podcast, is going to be with you in just a moment, my friends. But before we get there, are you subscribed to Coming Up Next? It's really straightforward to do, and it's going to streamline your podcast listening experience. All you have to do is head to comingupnext.com.au, select the platform that you listen to podcasts on, and bam, like magic, it's going to download into your pocket, onto your device, each and every week. Welcome to the show, my friends. Welcome to another episode of Coming Up Next, the podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, thank you for stopping by. And if it's not, welcome back. You know what we do here on the show. We have a philosophical ramble with some of the world's top creatives on their life, on their career, and on what makes them silly. And thank you to my guest last week. If you haven't heard the episode, it's available at comingupnext.com.au. I spoke with Liv Hewson from Netflix's Santa Clarita Diet. We had a quite remarkable chat that kind of spanned a whole list of the usual kind of philosophical ramblings and musings. So comingupnext.com.au for that, and for the entire back catalogue of podcast rambles. They're all there. They're just waiting to be consumed by you. And speaking of consumption, my guest this week, Amanda Logan. It's a little bit of a deviation from our usual guests. We met at a drama school many years ago, and she's gone on to kind of start up this grassroots blog called My Goodness Kitchen, which started off as something that she was doing. I mean, she's going to explain. We're going to dig into that, so I don't know. I don't really need to kind of rehash, but it started off as something, quite small, and it's grown to be this enormous vegan blog. She's just released a cookbook last year as well, and so I wanted to speak with Amanda about the process of starting that, the persistence that it requires to continue creating something essentially in a vacuum. And yeah, if you're interested in checking out her stuff, she's on all the grams, all the social medias at My Goodness Kitchen. You can find her cookbook, you can find everything available online. And for now, you can find her speaking with me on Coming Up Next with Amanda Logan. What did you study at uni?
I've got a communication degree. I've got a business degree, majoring in communication.
Right, okay. And so when you were doing that, you wanted to, what was the kind of end goal there?
Get a job.
Get a grown-up job.
Yeah, I told my dad that I wanted to study something in the arts. So I was quite interested in drama in high school, and I told my father, I want to study the arts, I'm going to be an actor or something like that. And he said, don't be bloody ridiculous, study business. And I went, okie dokie. So I went and got a business degree.
Yeah. And now we're here, I guess, many years later.
Many years
having
later.
Done that, having done an acting course, and now you run a successful vegan...
Yes, it was not the plan. It wasn't the plan. Doing a business degree was great because I have owned a couple of my own businesses, and it just helps to understand basic principles. But it was never fulfilling. And then I did study drama, and again, I loved it, but it just didn't sit. I worked out at the end that it wasn't for me. What I worked out was that I wanted to be heard. I didn't necessarily want to be seen.
Right.
Which is, it's kind of an occupational hazard if you try and hide behind the camera.
I mean, you could do voiceovers.
Yeah, this is true. I could probably do that. But
was it difficult to let go of that quote unquote dream?
Not really, because I think if things I'm not a fatalist, and I do think we are, to an extent, master of our own destinies. But I do think there is an element of, if something is meant to be, it will be. I think we kind of work in conjunction with the forces. So it wasn't, because what happened was, for the longest time I didn't think I could have a child, and then I fell pregnant with Ellie, and it became a no-brainer when I had her. It was, I can drive down and do a Kmart audition, or I can stay at home with my kid. And it just, Kmart's great, but and I just couldn't justify it. I couldn't justify, because we live in the hills. It's, almost an entire day, or at the very least a half day, to get down there for an audition, and it just... But you've got to jump through those hoops to be an actor. You have to go to the auditions that you don't necessarily want to, and I didn't want to. I wanted to spend time with her. I'm fortunate in that Pete's work allows me to stay at home. So that became a no-brainer. I do miss the creativity of it, but I think that you can just redirect, which I do with food. But what did happen was, I am quite an active person, so staying at home and just taking care of a baby wasn't enough, and that's how the blog came about.
Right. So has food been something that's always been significant in your life?
Absolutely.
Right. What do you think it is, or do you have early memories of...
I have early memories of some pretty lousy food. So I'm the youngest of 6 kids, so it always amazed me that my mum was able to feed all of us, because my father travelled a lot. So it wasn't that food was particularly memorable, because they were always just meals that 6 kids could eat. But the fact that she could do that and run us to all of our sports and netballs and all that was never kind of lost on me. I spent most of my summers and holidays with my grandmother, who was a shocking cook. But she was an animal lover. So, yeah, I've got awesome memories of some pretty crappy food.
Right.
But I've just always loved food, and I find it really creative. And I particularly find vegan cooking really creative, because you've got to think outside the box.
There's something very communal about food, and
absolutely,
people generally will eat together. I mean, the whole concept of breaking bread.
Absolutely, and I think particularly if you are a natural nurturer, which I think I am, which I think plays into, I just rescue everything I find. I can't help it. The amount of times that we've found ourselves with Pete pulled over on the side of the road because I've seen something that we have to go save. I think food plays into that personality type as well. I like to cook for people. I like to sit and, take care of people. I think that's just my nature.
Yeah.
So.
Right. And so when did you decide that you were going to become vegan?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. So what happened was so I'm very close to my animals. So prior to our dog Ella dying 6 years ago, I hadn't really had anyone close to me pass. And it was for the longest time, it was my husband Pete and our 2 dogs, Ruben and Ella, and then Ella passed away. And it just absolutely floored me, because we travelled with them. They were our lives she was 12 when she passed. So I really struggled with it. And what happened was, in that process of grieving and kind of saying, I hope her soul's okay, and I hope, that she's okay in the afterlife, or whatever that is, I realised that for me to believe that she was going to have an afterlife, or that she had a soul, that every animal that had ever crossed my plate had to have one. I couldn't have it both ways. I couldn't love my dog and want the best for whatever was in store for her, if you believe in that, and not every other animal. That's just selfish, silly, and kind of doesn't make sense. So that's how it started, but I was a pretty bad vegan to start with. So that was 6 years ago.
Fleegan.
I was so shit. I didn't know what I was doing. And it's not that veganism is particularly hard, but if you just go, right, I'm going to do it, and not know anything about nutrition in the first place, you are bound to run into trouble. So my iron got so low that I started having heart palpitations on a really regular basis, so I had to go and have scans and the whatnot. And it turned out that my iron was so low that it was starting to affect my heart, which I didn't even know could happen. So it can lead to heart attack.
Yeah, right.
Which was something that was like, whoa, my mind just blew.
Yeah, you hear like a lot of people who, like, their arguments against things like veganism or vegetarianism is not getting all of the nutritional content, iron or protein.
Absolutely. And in fairness, I was lousy with iron prior. I was bad with it anyway. So, but knowing that, because I'd always been quite a little bit low, knowing that I should have done better in the first instance. So I was pretty lousy. So when I became pregnant, the only thing I could keep down, much to my horror, was a junior burger. It was the only thing my mum would say, eat crackers, and I'd just end up in the garden bringing them back up again. Eat apples, eat oats. To this day I can't go near them. Yeah, so that was pretty harrowing, and it was because I hadn't taken care of myself properly. So I've probably been a very good vegan for 3.5 years, and an average fair weather vegan prior to that.
There's something kind of ironic in the, like, we've been speaking for 10 minutes and the kind of theme of that was that you want to take care of everything kind of external to you, but didn't take care of yourself in a kind of nutritional sense.
Absolutely, but I also think, I don't think it's an uncommon theme, and I particularly don't think it's uncommon with mothers. And actually, I don't
think it's uncommon with anyone.
Absolutely, but I think, I think we do tend to do it. I think it's natural for people to want to take care of those around them. I myself find it, and I know that Pete, my husband, does as well. I mean, he works ridiculously long hours to make sure that we can stay in this house, and that Ellie gets what she needs, and that I get what I need, and that I can be fulfilled by writing a blog, and and sometimes that is at his peril or at his loss. So I think it is a little bit natural. We tend to think of ourselves, last. Unless you're a narcissistic ass.
Hello.
Yeah, that is Walter, one of our...
Walter wants to be on microphone.
Yes, Walter always wants to be centre stage. We should probably send him off to drama school. The man has no personal space. Yeah. Okay. Pop down, buddy.
It's all right. We can have a cuddle later, Walter.
Walter, pop down, mate, please. Okay, good boy. Thank you.
So what was the kind of tipping point, I suppose, for you when you decided that you wanted to take what you'd learned about being vegan and combine your burning need to do something creative?
I guess when I became a good vegan, I still wasn't awesome at it. So I did things like I was cooking my family's food and then having a peanut butter sandwich, because it was just easier. And then the more I spoke to people, the more I realised that a lot of people... I have a gorgeous friend, Michelle, in the UK, and she says that she's V-curious. And I'm V-curious. And I have a lot of V-curious people in my life that don't necessarily know how to do it, or that they think it's really bland, that eating a vegan diet is really bland. Okay, that's my daughter, sorry.
Right. Lots of characters in this episode.
Yeah, there is, oh my gosh. At the heart of it, I'm still a foodie. I don't eat anything if it tastes like shit. I don't care if it's vegan. So if it's not delicious, it's not going to hit the plate. And I've always been quite creative and inventive with food. That hasn't changed. I just have to be more so now. I fell in love with photography, so that's been a huge creative outlet for me, particularly food photography, because I worked out pretty early on, if you wanted to have a blog that people were going to pay attention to, it had to be visual. So the first 12 months of the blog was spent just learning how to use my camera. I'd not really picked one up. I mean, I was a happy snapper with my iPhone, but learning how to shoot in manual and how to create images that were going to evoke some sort of hunger in the reader.
Telling a story.
Absolutely. I also made the choice to take all the advertising off the blog. I wanted it to be a luscious cookbook experience that just happened to be online. And that's been really fulfilling. So while I don't have, a lot of this stuff comes out pretty quickly because I do have a 5-year-old and 2 mental dogs, it's still hugely fulfilling. And to have people, and you get that feedback, you get people writing and saying, I tried this, it was awesome, and I did this, and I tweaked it by doing that. And it's great, it's an exchange. And that's what I love about it.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you think, or that you faced, or that people face in wanting to switch from a carnivorous diet to a vegan diet?
Probably their families and their loved ones. It's a very odd narrative, or people feel judged when you tell them that you're vegan. It's not like I walk around wearing a t-shirt, but, you go to someone's house and you know what, for the longest time, I would occasionally eat eggs to make other people feel more comfortable, which is just so fucked up.
Yeah.
Because I just, I have a girlfriend that wouldn't invite us for dinner for over 2 years, and she said, I'm terrified, I cannot cook for you. And I said, I'll make a salad and I'll eat that. She's like, no. And as it was, we had a lovely dinner, and she made a vegan dinner, and then she made a brownie, and she said, I'm so sorry, but I used one of my chooks as, chook eggs, and I ate it and just went, and driving home I went, well, I don't know why I did that. So a lot of it is making, I think to start out with, you feel a little bit like you have to make it okay for other people. That's really tricky, and people don't understand, and they do feel judged. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of militant vegans out there that do judge. I'm not one of them, because I think everyone has to come to something in their own time. If I ruled the world, no one would be eating vegan, but that hasn't happened yet. I'm still waiting.
You mean everyone would be eating vegan?
Eating vegans, that's what all the carnivores want. We would all be plant-based, but that's not the reality that we live in. But it is really hard because people that you know and love all of a sudden feel that you're judging them, and you're not. Or maybe you are, I don't know. Somehow, all of a sudden, what you put in your body food-wise is a bone of contention, which is really weird. It's a really odd thing to have to justify your lifestyle all the time. And we're just talking food. It's crazy. That's really challenging.
Do you think it's because, well, there's probably no hard and fast rule why, but I often think with these sort of things, it's because people get a reflection of their own choices and they don't like that reflection. So they're trying to justify why they do why they're making their choices.
Yeah, I do, to be honest. I think when you come across a vegan, I think non-vegans feel that all of a sudden a mirror's been held up to their own behaviour, and vegans can't be the only ones seeing the footage of slaughterhouses and the live export trade and what we do to male chickens, baby chicks. We can't be it's all over the internet. We can't be the only ones seeing that. The fact that some of us go, I can't do that, that's our choice. But I do think that there are those that are not necessarily, they're not ready to make that choice. Maybe it doesn't affect them, but I think there is an element of feeling bad because we now know what animals go through to get onto our plate.
So I guess, just going back to what you were saying about, having an iron deficiency when you first started, and a lot of people I mean, myself included, consider like, I mean, where do you get your proteins from? Where do you get, how do you, like, how have you overcome these initial kind of challenges?
Look, I mean, I take supplements, so I've got my vitamin B and my iron. I don't take them, I maybe take them once a week now, whereas in the early days I was taking them every day. Your legumes, your greens, buckwheat, you know, if I could sponsor buckwheat or grow buckwheat myself, I would. They're all, it's just thinking outside the box. There are other sources, because the reality is the cow that you consume to get your iron lives on grass and hay. So we're eating the flesh of animals that consume plants. So it makes sense that if you go to the source, that somewhere within that source there is iron. Silverback gorillas they're vegan and they're big motherfuckers. So they're getting their protein. They are getting their protein and their carbs and their iron and their vitamin B. They're getting it from somewhere. So, yeah, it exists.
Yeah. So, was the thinking behind starting My Goodness Kitchen, was it purely something that you wanted to do to kind of satiate your creativity, or
Absolutely.
were you thinking, okay.
Yeah. I never for a second thought that I would, I mean, I've always loved cookbooks. I never thought that I would have the opportunity to do one. It always seemed like a terrible, unless, you know, you self-publish or something, I thought it was something that happened to other people. Yeah. It's the same with being an actor. Yeah. I thought that was, like, I went to acting school, but I thought actually being an actor was something that happened to other people. In that instance, I was actually correct. But in terms of...
Well, you made yourself correct.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of, you know, gracefully or not so gracefully just stepped away. No, I never thought that the blog would still be going in 3 years. It was something I was doing my head in. I was bouncing off the walls in here. I mean, I love hanging out with my kid. She's awesome. But, you know, for the first 12 months of her life, she was a blob. Let's be honest. I mean, she, you know, not much of a conversationalist, and just lots of poo and snot and, you know, and they sleep. So I just was, to be honest, I was filling time. And then when I started to get feedback from readers and my friends were becoming more curious about my diet, and I went, you know what, this could be a platform to gently educate people on the vegan life. Because I think a lot of people are interested, but it just seems such a monumental undertaking. And I went through all of the stuff. I couldn't give up chocolate, I couldn't give up cheese, I couldn't give up eggs, and I did it one by one. I think after I'd had a really crap attempt at going vegan the first time, later after Ellie was born, it was just more of a case of following my own path, and chocolate was the first to go, and then cheese went, or well, meat obviously, because I'd been vegetarian for a long time. And then finally, you know, when I learnt more about eggs, well, eggs just went. So it kind of was a process.
Yeah, tonally though, I think there's nothing self-righteous about what you put out. No, there's nothing kind of soapboxy, or like, it is just, I mean, it's quite tongue-in-cheek in some regard as well.
Yeah, because it's fucking hard. It can be really hard. I don't dislike meat. You know what? I wish I was one of the vegans that look at meat and want to hurl. I smell bacon and go, oh my God, that smells amazing, and hoisin chicken, and it's really yum. I just wouldn't kill anything besides a carrot to eat it. And I just can't.
Do you have to kill a carrot?
Well, you kind of pull it out of its home and that, but you know what? Whatever. Right. No, but you know what I mean? I couldn't do it. I don't want to pay someone else to do it. I cannot be a part of that process or that cycle. And I'm not self-righteous about it because I find it quite a struggle. I wasn't vegan for 30 plus years of my life, so I ate meat. I can't stand there and go, well, I've never done it, because I have. So being judgy, I don't think got anyone anywhere. And I think there's a lot of vegans that are terribly unpopular because they're just dicks. And they judge and they take a high moral ground, which just because you're vegan doesn't necessarily make you a better or a more good person. It just means that you are able to live a life without consuming or using animals. You can still be a dick.
A lot of vegans are dicks.
I have met a few of them. Why don't I raise my daughter vegan? Because she's got to come to it herself, and she's my kid, so fuck off.
Yeah.
She will come to it. If I try and force my daughter to be vegan, I guarantee I will drive past McDonald's at Tacoma and she will be in there shoving a Big Mac into her face because I forced her into it.
Smoking those quarter pounders behind the locker room.
It's a gateway drug, mate.
Yeah.
So there's no point. I mean, when I cook, she eats vegan. When she's with her dad, she's not necessarily always vegan. I'm really honest about why I'm vegan. So she has no illusions as to where her stuff comes from, but she has the understanding of it of a 4 or 5 year old. I told her, she asked me why I was vegan, and I said because I don't like eating dead things or being the cause of anything dying so that I can eat. And she said, oh, that's such a shame because I love eating dead things. Yeah. So that's where she sits.
Right. What were some of the challenges, I guess, you faced in starting the blog, like just in like practical terms, forgetting the actual being a vegan part of it?
I am a techno doofus.
Right.
I'm literally a techno doofus. So things that take the average person an hour to learn might take me a full day. I just don't have, my brain doesn't work that way. I taught myself photography on YouTube. So I would just have my camera sitting there and then I'd watch the video and then I'd hit pause and work it out. So it's been a really slow process and that's incredibly frustrating. The second thing is that there are some really big bloggers in Australia, but it's actually really hard to get traction for a blog when you're not in the States. It is a business in the States. There are conferences, there are sponsorship, it's a business over there, and that's really tricky because most of my audience is in the States, but I'm here in Australia, so that's tough, where a lot of the products that perhaps that are seeking people to endorse it, well, if it's not available in Australia, and I don't tend to endorse stuff too often unless I use it, but if it's not available here in Australia,
what's the point?
I can't endorse it.
Yeah.
That's really challenging. So financially, man, blogging is really expensive, super expensive.
How did you manage to, or how did you find that you were able to get traction? Because it's grown to quite a large extent over the course of time. Has it been something that's happened just organically, or how did you start to see that grow?
It was organic. So like I said, for the first year, I didn't actually focus on the blogging side of it. I just wanted to be a better photographer. I wanted to be able to create a cookbook that was online. And then I kind of a little bit dipped my toe into the business of blogging. And then, oh my gosh, and I still just go, no, too hard basket, man.
Yeah.
SEO and copyright and all of that sort of stuff. Oh geez, and I'm still crap at it. I think what happened was, so I kind of liken the blog to an independent film. It actually got some critical acclaim in that some much larger bloggers started to pick up, and reputable bloggers started to pick up some of my recipes. And I had like Rachel Zoe out of the States picked up one of my recipes and posted it on her blog, and she's on her website, and that was huge. And then a magazine in the UK picked up a couple and published it in there. But it was like I had this critical acclaim. It was like the awesome film that no one saw for a really long time. It was like there were these really cool people going, it's an excellent, excellent blog, excellent film. But none of the public went and saw it. Yeah, it's a shame.
Until it was on Netflix.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, really late at night. And then eventually that just, you get a few large bloggers sending people to your blog, and it starts to... My blog is not huge by any... Oh my gosh. I mean, some of the bloggers in America, it is mind-boggling the numbers that they get to their blogs. It's just ridiculous. They're earning six-figure salaries every year. They've got... you know, they've branched out and created side business. It's just phenomenal.
Has that ever been a goal of yours?
No. No, it hasn't. Look, I'd like to make a nice living with food. Does it necessarily need to be the blog? No, not necessarily, but I do think it's a really... Blogging and those websites are a fantastic resource for people. I get very frustrated with a lot of... They're not vegan food people, but the Pete Evanses of the world and the Michelle Bridges of the world that tell us to be healthy, but it's very expensive, and a lot of people can't afford that. So I think blogs have got a really great opportunity to help people eat better, cook better, and it doesn't cost the average person anything. You know, I can help you become vegan via my blog, and I can share the journey with you, and it's not going to cost you $328 for a 6-week course. I mean, that stuff just shits me to tears. So I think I will always keep up the blog, but no, I would love to help anyone that wants to explore a plant-based diet. I would love to help them do that and let them know that it's okay that they fuck up, because they will. I did. At the back of McDonald's, bawling my eyes out into a junior burger. I'm such a bad person, but this is so good.
It's probably not real meat anyway, so...
No, it's probably plant-based.
Yeah.
God, wouldn't that be the best irony in the world?
The bread, on the other hand, that's probably got meat in it.
Yeah, and it's got just a shit ton of sugar. So. But yeah, if I can help people...
I mean, it must have been pretty gratifying when... I mean, even now, but particularly when you started, when you would have people contacting you to engage in a conversation with you about what you're passionate about.
Yeah, and I love that people felt that they could tell me their challenges around it and their failures, and for us to have that sort of... For them to have that trust in me. And I think that is in part because I don't put a lot of advertising on the blog, and I don't endorse products. Like, it's just me kind of hanging out in my little cyberspace, and I love that. And I get grandmothers emailing me and saying, oh, my grandson's gone vegan and he's coming over for dinner, can you recommend something? And then, you know, they'll write back and tell me how it went. And I love that. I love that. I just think it's the best thing ever, you know? And then I can help them. Yeah, I really love that.
So I guess with growth, you know, there's always going to be new challenges. I mean, for me, I always find that, like, keeping up the content is can be a daunting prospect. And I am only releasing something once a week.
Yeah, and I am on a break for that reason. I did the cookbook last year, and the turnaround was incredibly fast, which is unusual.
What was the process of putting that together like?
The really cool thing about the cookbook was that I didn't have to go to the publisher. They came to me out of the state, which was phenomenal. I guess the thing that is a little bit different about my blog is that, well, I have the tagline, it's vegan food tested on carnivores. So it's a very clear...
messaging.
Yeah, I guess, that the food that I cook has to be acceptable to carnivores. So as a cookbook, that worked. So I was super lucky that they approached me. So there was a process of they had to test recipes from the blog, and if I wanted to do my own photography, I had to send them a portfolio and all that kind of stuff. So that process took a little while, but the actual turning around of the book was incredibly quick. And I did the photography for it as well. So I did find by the time the book was released at the end of the year, so it's only just come out in December, I was pretty stuffed and probably creatively drained. So I have taken sort of the Christmas period and what have you to recharge and rethink. But in that's been awesome, because I will take the blog in a new direction that I've kind of worked out over the weeks that I've had off, which is fantastic. So I'm never not creating. I'm just not, at the moment, I'm just not physically creating.
Yeah. Well, when and I guess having a cookbook as well is like, it just legitimizes things further.
Yeah.
Especially, I'm imagining if it's like a reasonable publisher, like international publisher as well.
Yeah, it's my publisher is, I guess, smallish. They're an independent publisher, but the book is being distributed through Macmillan. So, it's everywhere, which is great.
When did they first approach you? What was that? Tell me the whole kind of process. It
was very weird because my blog, particularly sort of 16 months ago or 17 months ago, was small, and I was even starting to go, I'm really tired. I'm pumping out all this content, and I feel like no one's reading it, and I want to keep going, but I was actually getting pretty disheartened. And Ellie was 3 turning 4 and getting far more active. So justifying the time spent working on a blog was becoming harder and harder. And then I woke up one morning and there was an email in my inbox that said, hi, my name's Sarah. I'm from Page Street Publishers out of Massachusetts. Love the concept of your blog. Would you consider doing a cookbook? If you already have a cookbook deal, congratulations and good luck with it. And I kind of just sat up and handed the computer to my husband and went, am I reading that right? He's like, yeah, man. You need to email him right back. And that's kind of how it started. So yeah, like I said, there was a process. They need to make sure that your recipes actually work. It's all well and good to have a pretty blog, but if the recipes don't work. So there was a testing process. I had to send them through a table of contents proposal, put together a portfolio of all my images, because I really wanted to make sure that I was the photographer for it, not someone else. Yeah, so that actually took about 3 months, and then I turned the book around. So admittedly, I could have said, no, I'd like longer. They really wanted to get the book out for a winter release in the States, so they wanted to get it out for Christmas. And it was my first book, and I didn't want to go, oh no, I don't know that I can do that. I went, you know what? I'm going to make that happen. My hair fell out during the process, so in the shower it was coming out in clumps. But I still got it done. It was turned around in about 5 months, when normally a cookbook is around 18 months.
It's the old actor's mentality of say yes and figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was terrified that if I rocked the boat at all, that they might take it away. Knowing them now as I do, I know that's not the case. But at the time, I didn't know them. They were, they're on the other side of the world. I had no idea who these people were. So next time, lesson learned. Next time I will, if there is a next time, I will take a lot longer, and hopefully my hair won't fall out again.
Did you feel like, aside from your hair, did you feel like you compromised on anything by doing it that quickly?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, because I do look at it now and go, no, not necessarily. I think it's a good cookbook, and it has gotten good feedback, and I'm very proud of the work. Do I think I would have done it differently if I'd had more time? Absolutely. Absolutely. Like even just the planning stage and the testing of the recipes stage would have had a little more organisation to it. I mean, to get that book done, there was a period where I was getting up at 3 a.m. and I was working until my daughter woke up at 7. I would then get her sorted for kindy. Kindy's at 9:15. Then I would come home, run the dogs, work again until she was picked up at 2:15. Spend time with her. She goes to bed at 7 o'clock. So from 7 o'clock onwards until I went to bed, I was working again. So it kind of sucked balls. But
it's intense.
Yeah, but it had to be done. There was no other way, because the one thing that I did struggle with during the process was an element of guilt, because I felt like I was always in the book even when I was with my family. But unfortunately it had to be that way, and it wasn't for a really long period of time, and it's not like she doesn't actually remember it being a particularly challenging time for her. But knowing what I know now, I would certainly say I want at least 12 months to do it. You know, I don't want to miss out on her stuff.
It's important.
It's more important.
How have you... I mean, I suppose when you started My Goodness Kitchen... Why did you call it My Goodness Kitchen, by the way?
Okay, so... so the blog was originally called... it was the Goodness Exchange, because I wanted it to be this exchange of ideas. I had this vision that, what it is now, which is, people communicating with me communicating with them. And then my friend Carla Bonner, who I know that you have had here, pointed out to me that when put together in a URL or in a name for Instagram or something like that, it looks like it reads The Good Sex Change. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it.
Yeah.
So I just went, oh my God. And I just started, it had just started growing a little bit. So I wanted to keep the goodness kind of thing in it, and just went, we'll just call it My Goodness Kitchen, because that's what it is. I mean, sometimes I think about changing it, but,
I think it's great. Tells you what you're getting.
It is exactly what it is, and the byline is vegan food tested on carnivores. But yeah, once I saw the original URL, I could never not see it again. So thank you, Carla, for that.
So when you started it, I could imagine that you would look at something like getting a cookbook, and that would be like a significant marker of success for the blog.
Yeah.
So how is that concept for you, or how has that evolved conceptually, this idea of success, and what that looks like for My Goodness Kitchen?
I think even just, I don't know whether it has to do with the blog, but I think my understanding of success just growing older has shifted. So if I had done My Goodness Kitchen in my 20s, I would have wanted to create an entity that was going to change the world, and I was going to be the biggest blogger in the world, and have my own television show, and I was, now, older, my concept, my understanding, or what I'm striving for is balance. I want to be able to make some money for myself, help create a world that is better than the one that we exist in now. I want to have the kind of life where I take pride in my work and I feel like I'm doing something worthwhile, but it's not at the cost of spending time with my daughter. She's only little for it feels like a nanosecond. So I really want to be the type of person that she thinks about when she's 15 or 16 and says, my mum was always there no matter what. That's what I want for her. So my measure of success is having something for myself, something for my family, and something particularly for my kid. So it has, it's really changed. Would I still love a television show? Absolutely. I think the vegan message has to get out there, and I think that's the next, I mean, the UK, I think the BBC have just started producing their first vegan cooking show. I'd love to be a part of that movement. But at the same time, if I'm not, I'm not going to give up my world to make that happen now, whereas in my 20s I probably would have. So I just think differently. I want a life of balance. My end game for My Goodness Kitchen is for us to actually have a sanctuary of sorts on a very, a decent sized bit of land, and we rescue some dairy cows and let them raise their babies, and some horses that are due for the knackery. I want to see if we can help the unhelpable, the animals that no one wants. I would love that, and I think it's really important for my daughter as well to understand where the role that animals can play in our lives if we let them. I think it will teach her responsibility and compassion, and I don't think that is ever a bad thing. And it's just, it's my idea of heaven. That would be pretty awesome. Keep blogging, keep photographing, keep animals.
Well, hopefully the next podcast will be from your new block of land.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for doing this and having a chat.
My pleasure. It was awesome.
All my conversations end with the same question. I'm trying to figure out a way to reframe it.
Okay.
Because I feel like the show has evolved beyond what makes you silly, but I haven't figured out how to reframe it.
What makes me silly? Well, my kid. Chocolate. Chocolate really makes me silly. Chocolate is just... Let's do a podcast about chocolate. Let's talk about that.
I'm sure a lot of people listening to this would say,
oh my gosh,
you're sitting in their cars saying, yes, please.
Chocolate or no makes everyone silly, and it just makes the world a better place. Vegan or no, because I can't have milk chocolate anymore. But it's just awesome, and it cures many ills. I think if many of our politicians were eating chocolate, the world would be a better place.
All right, well, we'll brainstorm a chocolate and probably wine-based podcast.
Okay, that sounds good, because they're both vegan. Awesome.
Thanks so much, Amanda.
Thank you. Thanks, Al.